Hey guys, I'm Bailey. I'm the developer of Dungeons of Oblivion. That's a working title, so that might change later. I've always been a fan of devlogs, seeing what cool ideas other people come up with and how they overcome the challenges that might arise from making their game. Recently, I have been working on broadening my knowledge and learning new things to improve my game dev skills. And to do that, I started with trying to learn how to make a multiplayer game using Photon 2. I know that they have a newer version of Fusion that came out, which I tried to use, but it was a little too over my head at the moment. But then I remembered that in college, we had to make a simple multiplayer game for a project and that we used Photon 2. So I opened that up and I started looking into how to use it, and it was a lot easier for me to understand than Fusion was. So over the course of a month or so, I started making a simple game to just learn how to use Pun. As I worked on this project, it made me think of how I'd really like to finally release a game. I've worked on a few games in the past that I never ended up finishing for various reasons, and I thought that this could be the first game that I release and get that experience. But as I worked on this simple project, I realized that it just wasn't fun, and not something that people would really want to play. With that, I started to think and came up with something that I think would be fun to play with friends or by yourself, and that was interesting. So I essentially restarted work on my whole project and converted all the existing things I already had and coded to fit the new idea I had. That being Dungeons of Oblivion. So like I said, I want to make Dungeons of Oblivion unique. I don't want it to be like your typical dungeon crawler. I want to make it so the first level you play, you essentially choose what you want your class to be. Or find your class, I should say. I want it so the more you explore the dungeon, you can come across small quests that you can complete, and in completing those quests, you unlock a new class you can try. And the class that you leave the dungeon with will be the one that you play as for the rest of the game. And I want to add some that are harder to find or get than others, and to make it so some will be random, so you can keep trying the same quest and get different results, and some might be a little stronger than others. With that, I also want to make it so the dungeons are never the same either, that every time you replay a dungeon, that it will never be the same other than key areas that are essential for the level. So that way it will always be interesting and has unlimited replayability. So I plan on making all the dungeons procedurally generated, and players won't get used to them and get bored of them because each time they enter, the dungeon will be different. So to get started on this project, I wasn't sure the art style I wanted and how I wanted things to look. Then I remembered that years ago, I bought a fantasy asset pack that cost like $80 or something, and I never really used it. And so instead of having wasted that money on a really good asset pack that I might never use, and since I'm not very good at artistic things, I decided to use it. Now for the most part, this is just a placeholder like the enemy and player model. I do plan on changing those and giving them better animations, but for the time being, this will be perfect to just get started and to get things working and looking how I want. Now that that's out of the way, I started out by taking the pre-made rooms in the scene that came with the asset and started to make larger versions of them. Since I want to make the dungeons procedurally generated, I wanted to create different variants of the rooms and to make my own. I've never done procedural generation before, so I want to make sure that I have all the things I need ready and to have plenty of variation so the dungeons aren't so similar. So my idea is that most of the rooms in the first dungeon is where you'll be able to start these quests to choose your class. So like the laboratory that you see me working on now is where you'll go to start the quest to be able to be a wizard. And I want part of the quest that you have an option of items you can use to give yourself the ability to use magic. And depending on the items you choose, that will depend on the type of magic you will get. And I want to do stuff like that for some of the other classes too, that you kind of have to hunt for specific ones, like some might be rarer than others, and that maybe it's something you could show to your friends and everything. I always have fun with games like that and trying to find like rare stuff or hidden things like that. And I think it would be really fun to implement that. After that, I started working on the player combat system, which I've never really done anything like this before, so it's something new to me that I had to look into and figure out exactly how I wanted to go about it. And I found a great tutorial on how to do this by this channel here. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but you should check it out if you're looking for a combat system too. It is very helpful. Now he uses a state machine for his player, which I tried to do also, but I wasn't able to get it working with pun, so I just went back to the first person controller that I was using before. I think the combat system came out looking really good, and it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And I really like how I was able to make it have a combo system with the attacks, and I think that's going to look really good with different weapons and better animations. I also made a simple UI trying to figure out how exactly I want it to look and work. What I have is really simple right now, but I think it'll work well. I just want to add more slots for abilities. I don't want the player to only have like 2 abilities that they can use at a time. I want them to have like 4 and an ultimate ability that you can use to deal a large amount of damage at once. That way you can have plenty of options of abilities that you can combo and try to make the strongest build that you can. I also have it at the moment so each time you attack, you use some of your stamina. So if you run out, you won't be able to attack or sprint. I'm also thinking about making it so blocking uses up stamina too. That the longer you block, you use up stamina as if you were running. But right now, I just have it so once you get hit, you don't take any damage and you have a small cooldown before you can block again. Now for the enemies, I also debated using a state machine or a behavior tree. And for the time being, I decided to use a state machine. But I'm not 100% sure about that, so if you guys know more about that than me, let me know what you think I should use. But I think using the state machine looks pretty good and the enemies react how I want. And that's about everything I've done for Dungeons of Oblivion. This has been about 2 weeks worth of work after reskinning my old project, and I'm pretty happy with how it's looking. This is just a start, and I plan on posting more devlogs for it when I make a good amount of progress. So there won't be a set schedule, but I'll try and post a devlog once or maybe twice a month. It feels really nice finally sharing something I've worked on to the world, and I would really love to see what people think. If you guys like this, liked what you saw, and want to follow my progress on Dungeons of Oblivion, then feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next devlog.